Israel's military said an airstrike on Beirut killed the commander of Hezbollah's missile and rocket force on Tuesday, as cross-border attacks by both sides increased. Lebanon reported more than 560 people had been killed, including 50 children, and more than 1,800 wounded since Israel launched heavy strikes on Monday morning, the country's health minister told Al Jazeera Mubasher TV. Israel's military later said the Air Force also conducted extensive strikes on Hezbollah targets, including weapons storage facilities and dozens of launchers that were aimed at Israeli territory. Israeli military spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari addressed the situation in a live televised statement.
We strive that the operation is as short as possible. That is why we are striking with huge power. Thus, we have to be prepared for it to take time.
Hezbollah said it launched rockets on Tuesday at the Dado military base in northern Israel and attacked the Atlat naval base south of Haifa with drones. In Lebanon, families from the south clogged the highways fleeing north. Members of the Sidon municipality said they have received at least 3,000 displaced people and have so far opened 14 schools to host them.
Our situation is like garbage. Strikes, planes hovering, and a war of total destruction.
Israel's new offensive against Hezbollah has stoked fears that nearly a year of conflict between Israel and the militant Palestinian group Hamas in Gaza could destabilize the Middle East. At the UN, U.S. President Joe Biden sought to calm tensions.
A full-scale war is not in anyone's interest. Even if the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible.
Meanwhile, Israel's UN ambassador Danny Danon said Israel was open to ideas for de-escalating the conflict in Lebanon.
We had experience in Lebanon in the past. We are not eager to start any ground invasion anywhere.
Israel wants to secure its northern border and allow displaced residents to return. This has set the stage for a long conflict, while Hezbollah said it will not back down until a ceasefire is reached in Gaza. The fighting has raised fears that the United States, Israel's close ally, and regional power Iran, which has proxies across the Middle East, will be sucked into a wider war.
As Israeli forces and Hezbollah militants traded fire on Tuesday, civilians on both sides of the border sought shelter wherever they could. A technical institute in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, was converted into a shelter for those displaced. Rima Ali Shaheen told Reuters her family spent 16 hours on the road under bombardment to get here.
It has caused anxiety for the kids. They're on edge. If they hear a door slammed, they would go crazy. It's a lot of pressure for grown-ups and children. They're exhausted and stressed. They could not sleep. There's no calmness or quiet. We hear news of bombardment here or there. It is very stressful for the kids. They're living through terrible conditions.
An official from the Sidon municipality said the city had opened 14 schools to house around 3,000 displaced people seeking shelter, and that the numbers were climbing. This man told Reuters the situation was like garbage, a war of total destruction. Israel said it struck a Hezbollah-controlled area of Beirut for a second consecutive day after mounting a new wave of airstrikes on targets in Lebanon. Hezbollah said it had fired rockets into northern Israel earlier on Tuesday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday reiterated his position that his country was at war with Hezbollah, not the people of Lebanon. He said the Iranian-backed militant group was endangering the population by secreting weapons in their homes, and his message followed one Monday, calling on civilians to flee the fighting. Lebanese authorities said some 558 people had been killed in airstrikes on Monday, including 50 children and 94 women. At least 1,835 more were wounded, they said, and tens of thousands have fled for safety. A hospital in Tyre is treating some of the injured children. Another in Beirut opened new wards to treat war wounded. South of the border, Israelis are similarly seeking shelter. Dashboard-mounted camera on this car shows motorists pulling over and taking cover as a rocket struck just up the road. A municipal building in the border town of Kiryat Shmona was hit by a Hezbollah rocket on Tuesday. In Nahariya, a beachfront city familiar with air raid sirens, 53-year-old Yehuda Kidron said residents knew the protocols to stay safe.
You have to follow the rules. If there's an alarm, you have to hide, you have to lie down, then maybe go to a safe room. But if you're not, you're on the street, you have to lie down, away from the car. That's the only thing you have to do.
Siblings Yonatan and Mia Shorek live in the Israeli city of Haifa.
וזה היה מאוד מפחיד ומלחיץ. והבומים היו חזקים.
Mia said the booms were loud and frightening during an evening of air raid sirens and explosions as rocket fire from Lebanon was intercepted in the skies above. The Israel-Lebanon border has simmered with tension in parallel to the war in Gaza, tensions that have raised fears of an all-out war. The Israeli government has made securing the northern border a war priority, setting the stage for a long conflict, while Hezbollah has vowed it will not back down until a ceasefire is reached in Gaza.
The big picture, what it shows is that Harris took what had been a race that Trump was really starting to run away with before President Joe Biden ended his reelection bid, and has made it far more competitive. This is a national finding, so it doesn't take into account the state-by-state nature of the contest, but it does show that Harris has made this a very open and very competitive race. Historically, Republicans have generally held the advantage on the economy. The public has seen them as better stewards of it than Democrats. And this poll found that Harris is really kind of whittling away Trump's lead in that area. We had her Trump up 43% to Harris's 41% when we asked respondents who they thought would be better at managing the economy, jobs, and unemployment. And that's a much tighter lead for Trump than he had, as recently as the summer, when he was 11 points ahead of her on that issue.
We're going to take other countries' jobs. We're going to take their factories, and we had it really rocking 4 years ago. We're going to bring thousands and thousands of businesses and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the good old USA. And under my plan, American workers will no longer be worried about losing your jobs to foreign nations. Instead, foreign nations will be worried about losing their jobs to America. I want German car companies to become American car companies. I want them to build their plants here. I want to beat China in electronics production, and we'll be able to do that easily. We have the greatest genius, the greatest minds here, and then we end up building them in different places. A lot of that's really stupid tax policy. I want GE, IBM, and every other manufacturer that left us to be filled with regret and come sprinting back to our shores, and they will. So as your president, here is the deal that I will be offering to every major company and manufacturer on earth. I will give you the lowest taxes, the lowest energy costs, the lowest regulatory burden, and free access to the best and biggest market on the planet, but only if you make your product here in America. It all goes away if you don't make your product here.
US President Joe Biden will pledge 1 million vaccines and at least $500 million to African countries on Tuesday to support their response to a major Mpox outbreak. That's according to a senior administration official who said Biden will make the announcement in New York, where he is attending the United Nations General Assembly. He will also, the official said, call on other countries to follow suit. In August, the World Health Organization declared Mpox a global public health emergency. An outbreak of the viral infection in Democratic Republic of Congo has spread to neighboring countries and beyond, including India. On Monday, the WHO said there had been nearly 30,000 suspected Mpox cases reported in Africa so far this year. The disease is transmitted through close contact and causes flu-like symptoms and pus-filled lesions. It is usually mild, but can be fatal. The WHO said more than 800 people have died of suspected Mpox across the continent this year. The expectation is that the US donated doses will be of Bavarian Nordic's Mpox vaccine and will come from a US stockpile. The 1 million shots are in addition to 60,000 that were previously donated.
Singapore's former transport minister pleaded guilty on Tuesday to accepting gifts while in office in a rare graft case that has gripped the Asian financial hub. The case charges Subramaniam Iswaran, who goes by S. Iswaran, with receiving favours including tickets to English Premier League soccer matches and the Singapore Formula One Grand Prix. Iswaran, who joined the cabinet in 2006, is the first full minister to be tried in court on graft charges in the wealthy city-state, which prides itself on having a well-paid and efficient bureaucracy, as well as strong governance. The 62-year-old was arrested in July last year, accused of taking kickbacks worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from property tycoon Ong Beng Seng and another businessman. Iswaran was advisor to the Grand Prix steering committee, while Ong owns the rights to the race. Ong has not been charged with any offence. Iswaran had rejected the allegations when he resigned from the cabinet. In court, he pleaded guilty to accepting gifts as a public servant, as well as to obstructing justice, instead of charges that include corruption. In a surprise move, the prosecution dropped the vast majority of charges against Iswaran, and it asked for a sentence of up to 7 months in prison, according to Channel News Asia. That's much lighter than the maximum of 7 years and fines for obstructing justice, or the 2 years and fines for accepting gifts. The news outlet reported that Iswaran will be sentenced on October 3rd. The last corruption case involving a Singaporean minister investigated for allegedly accepting bribes was in 1986, but the man died before he could be charged in court. According to Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, Singapore was among the world's top 5 least corrupt countries last year.
The floods have never ever been this high before. You know, they usually go up that little road up there where the houses are, but not to this level where it's just covering everything. It's disgusting. It's terrible.
China urged the United States to stop what it calls unreasonable suppression of its companies, including EV makers. Wednesday's announcement came in response to US proposals to ban Chinese software and hardware in vehicles on its roads, which Washington says is due to national security concerns. A spokesperson for China's Commerce Ministry said the US move has no factual basis. They further argued it violates the principles of market economy and fair competition and is a typical protectionist approach. The US Commerce Department on Monday proposed the planned regulation. It would force American and other major automakers in future to remove key Chinese software and hardware from vehicles in the US connected to the internet and navigation systems. China argued the action seriously affects the normal cooperation between China and the US in the field of connected vehicles. Beijing further said it disrupts the global automotive industry supply chain and harms the interests of US consumers. The move would effectively ban Chinese cars and trucks from the US market. There are major concerns in Washington around data collection by connected Chinese vehicles on US drivers and infrastructure, and potential foreign manipulation of vehicles. China and the US have fought over national security concerns, with Washington enforcing strict export bans on semiconductors. Now, the latest proposal is a significant escalation in restrictions on Chinese vehicles, software and components.
Striking workers at Boeing aren't interested in a new pay deal made by the company. That's according to the union representing them, which said Tuesday it had done a poll to find out. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers said the offer of a 30% pay hike was overwhelmingly rejected. Instead, it's seeking a 40% jump and the restoration of other benefits. More than 32,000 Boeing workers walked off the job earlier this month in the union's first strike since 2008. That has halted output of the firm's best-selling 737 MAX jets, threatening billions in costs. Boeing didn't comment on the rejection of the pay proposal, which it had described as its best and final offer. Earlier Tuesday, the firm had extended a deadline for a vote on the new contract, after previously setting a Friday cut-off. It's all just the latest twist in a tumultuous year for Boeing, which began with a mid-air blowout on one of its MAX planes. That revived concern over the company's quality controls and hurt its ability to ramp up output of the jets. Now it's frozen hiring and furloughed thousands of workers in response to the strike, in a bid to contain costs. On Tuesday, Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary, a huge buyer of Boeing jets, said the firm had told him there would be delays delivering new aircraft. The Irish airline chief said he was told the delays would be the length of the strike, plus 2 or 3 weeks on top.